Hi, I am Shiva Shankar. Let us discuss something about micro teaching, and I welcome you all to just participate in this discussion. Micro teaching was first tried and ventured in Stanford University in 1963 by two research scholars, namely Allen and Ryan. Let us just know what is this micro teaching means. As we all know well, micro is something small. So in this particular micro teaching, we would like to know something about small. What small? About a small class, about a small number of audience, about a small number of skills to be practiced, and about a small length of lesson. As we know well, every profession is demanding its own challenges and its own skills to be practiced by the professionals in that particular profession. So teaching profession is also one such profession which needs its own skills to be demonstrated by the teachers. As many researchers have given so many listing of skills that are practiced by a teacher in every day in and day out. So in this case, few studies are stating that there could be about some as good as 140 skills that are practiced in a teacher in a classroom. And few researchers are highlighting that there could be about some 40 skills. In Indian context also, few researchers have highlighted that there could be as many as 22 skills which are practiced every day in a classroom by a teacher. So in this context, so whatever the efforts made by the teacher to make the learners understand that what we call it as a skill or approach, that may include giving examples, giving demonstration, giving lectures, and as well as some non-verbal behaviors like smiling, nodding head and gestures. Altogether we call it as a teaching skill. So in this case, now let us just throw some more light about what a skill means and what are the components present in micro teaching and what is a micro teaching cycle, and all this context. Let's just have a look at it, right? So as you know well that micro teaching is a teacher training technique. Allen and Eve, that is, it was invented and as well as tried during this 1963, which was developed later during this 1968. Allen and Eve have given a definition that a system of controlled practice that makes it possible to concentrate on specific teaching behaviors and to practice teaching under controlled conditions. Now, as you know well that micro teaching is a miniature classroom teaching, that is, it's a scaled down teacher training technique. It means that there could be about some 5 to 10 people present, and moreover the class will also be lasting only for 5 to 10 minutes. So this is the scaled down technique. The classroom size has been reduced as well as the number of audience present in the classroom has also been reduced. So in this context, a micro teaching is a scaled down technique. Then the content is also minimized. The lesson to be taken in the particular class, that is the micro lesson, has also been reduced in this particular session. Moreover, a single teaching skill is being focused. A single teaching skill is focused by the trainee. And moreover, micro teaching is a skill training technique, right? So in this context, micro teaching is just going to just develop a teacher with few sessions, namely a teach session. In this teach session, the trainee teacher is just going to teach a lesson after careful planning, right? After teaching this particular session, the teacher or the teacher trainee is given feedback by the peer group members. The feedback may be by the people present in the group, that is the peers present there, or otherwise by the superiors, or the trainee themselves can take their own self feedback through the video if they are having the provision for that. Then the feedback session is also called a critic session, where the people are going to give some constructive criticism so as to shape the skills of the trainee teacher. Then probably the time required for this particular feedback session could be lasting for about some 10 to 15 minutes. The next session, the teacher trainee is just going to have some replan based on the feedback or the critics given by their peer or superiors, and they are just going to have the reteach session where they are going to teach the same lesson with different peoples, and naturally they are going to get the re-feedback, that is the re-critic session, through which the trainee is going to be shaped with all his skills. Here is the simple micro teaching cycle. It just starts with plan, right? This particular plan session is being planned by this particular trainee teacher. Then he is just teaching the lesson to the group of people. Then after teaching that, he is just going to get the feedback from the peer members as well as from the teacher educators or superiors, or they can take their own self feedback if at all they are having permission for the video. Then they are going to make a purposeful replan. Then they are going to reteach it, and they are going to get the re-feedback from the peers. Then naturally again they are going to plan so as to attain perfection in the delivery of the skill that is required out of a teacher. You can very well tell that micro teaching has got about some 3 phases in that particular case. The first one is knowledge acquisition phase, and the second one is skill acquisition phase, and that is the third one is transfer phase. In this knowledge acquisition phase, the teacher trainees are just made them to understand what that particular skill and its component means. Then in skill acquisition phase, they are just encouraged to practice that components, and in transfer phase they are just practicing all the components to exhibit the total skill so as to make that skill completely demonstrated by them. In Indian model, as it was suggested by B.K. Passy and others, we are having the cycle like this. The teaching session will be lasting for about some 6 minutes. The feedback session is for about some 6 minutes. The replan session takes for about some 12 minutes. After that replan, the candidate is again going to reteach for about some 6 minutes. Then again he is going to get the re-feedback for about some 6 minutes. Altogether, the total cycle lasts for about some 36 minutes as per Indian context. Right. In this thing, we have not just taken up the first component, that is plan, right? So as it was recommended by Allen and Ryan during this 1963 and as well as in later part, there would be as many as about some 40 important skills which every teacher must try, and they must know about these particular skills. The first one is the skill of writing instructional objectives, then skill of set induction, and skill of stimulus variation, skill of explaining, skill of fluency in questioning, skill of probing questions, skill of using higher order questions, and skill of divergent questions. Skill of recognizing attending behavior of the people, skill of lecturing, skill of illustrating with the examples, skill of planned repetition, skill of reinforcing people participation, and skill of non-verbal cues as well as silence. These are all the 14 components which have been identified that are practiced day in and day out by many of the teachers as per Allen and Ryan. Among these 14 skills, there are few skills which must be practiced by almost all teachers in day-to-day classroom situations. Among the few skills, let us see about some 4 skills in detail in this particular session. Those 4 skills may be skill of stimulus variation, skill of explaining, skill of reinforcement, and as well as skill of right. So in this context, first let us see what is this skill of stimulus variation. As we know well, even in our home, many of the children and kids will be watching the television program. They will be giving more priority to the advertisements, because in advertisements they are having a lot of frame changes. That particular frame change make them to just watch the advertisements. Even the infants are just watching without just knowing what is being conveyed in these advertisements. So this particular changes in the media is making the learners to give their attention in that. So in this context, the skill of stimulus variation is also the skill practiced by teacher, which is a deliberate attempt to draw the attention of the learners. This particular skill of stimulus variation is an important skill. It has got few components. Now let us see what are the components present in this particular skill. This skill of stimulus variation has got about some components like body movements, gestures, change in speech pattern, focusing, change in interaction style, change in audio-visual sequence, and pause. So altogether this particular skill has got about some 7 components. Now let us see in detail that what are the each component is meaning to the teacher training. Right? First, now let us see body movements. Body movements means the purposeful movements made by the trainee teacher or teacher to get the attention of the learners. That means moving towards the blackboard, moving towards the students, making some query and to just move towards the learners. All these movements are just called body movements. If the teacher is just going to be static in one point or one place, probably it may be just bringing down the interest of the learners. So making a purposeful movement in between the classroom is one such behavior. But remember that a teacher must not make some pendulum movement in the classroom. The movement must be a meaningful, purposeful movement in the classroom. The next component, as we know, is gestures. That is how the teacher is just using his hands and other facial expression to give some meaningful gestures for the learners. For example, while a teacher is just discussing about, in lower class, if he is going to discuss about an elephant, if he is just showing his hands like this to show the size, we call it as a gesture. Likewise, while he is discussing about atomic structure, he may just tell about the miniature size of the atom using his hands and facial expression. While he is just discussing about some microorganisms like bacteria and virus, he may just talk about using the microscope. You can just use the gesture like this. So in this context, how a teacher is just going to make some gestures so as to give some visual experience to the learner is what our concern. The next component is change in speech pattern. A teacher must not have a monotonous style of speaking. It may just make the learners a bit bored. So a teacher must give some voice modulation. While we are talking about that dude, like that, he has to make some sound. At the same time, he may just draw the attention. See, we are going to like that. So he must be well versed in making a very big sound as well as just making whispers so as to draw the attention of the learners. The next one is focusing. Focusing is a deliberate attempt made by the teacher to just get the attention of the learners. This focusing may be just all of you listen here like that, or he may just make him just to draw the attention by making some highlighting on a blackboard, or he may just make some sound or tapping so as to get the attention of the learners, what we call it is focusing. The next one is change in interaction style. The teacher may just make some interaction with the learners, or he may just make the learners to have their own interaction among the learners, or the teacher may encourage the learner to teacher interaction style, what we call it as the change in interaction style. Next comes the change in audio-visual sequence. How the teacher is effectively using the audio-visual sequence so as to make the learners understand better. From audio medium, how he is just moving to charts or board writing or something like that, then how he is moving to other things. Then comes a meaningful silence. Just posing a question and just waiting for the learners to answer for it, what we call it as pausing. Right? Okay, you can stop. The next component is skill.